we've been going to space for 60 plus years, and we all know the story of the space race and how we got to the moon. But not a lot of people are very informed on the state of modern space travel. Modern space travel is actually almost completely dominated by privately funded companies, and I'd actually like to start out by talking about one of the most popular space travel companies, SpaceX. You probably know them not for the milestones they've overcome, but probably because they claim to be the first, they're going to be the first to put people on Mars. And so I just want to go over some of their milestones they've achieved. So they were actually the first privately funded company to put a customer payload into orbit with the Falcon 1 rocket. They were also the first privately funded company to dock with the International Space Station with the Dragon capsule. And they've actually done some pretty significant things by landing used boosters on floating platforms and other things. And they're actually even pushing forward to do even more insane stuff. So their next rocket is going to be the BFR, the Big Falcon rocket. And it's not just innovative in its size and its just how large it's going to be. It's also innovative in the kind of engines it's going to use. It's going to use methane-fueled engines, which is actually a pretty different source of energy for rockets that's almost never been used before. And so another space agency I'd like to talk about is a space agency called Galactic. You might have heard of them. They use planes, what are called strato launchers. They fly a plane up into the stratosphere, and then a separate spaceship detaches from the plane and flies up into space. And so they're actually planning to put private customers on those spaceships to put them on the very edge of space above the carbon line. And a third privately funded space agency I want to talk about is Rocket Labs. Rocket Labs hasn't done anything as near significant as the previous, but they are a relatively small company, and they actually have put one of the smallest orbit-capable rockets, and they actually used that rocket to launch a payload not even a year ago called the Humanity Star. It was a cool little crystal ball just to show that they can actually put payloads into orbit, and soon they're going to start putting CubeSats into orbit. And so now I'm going to talk about government agencies. Government agencies have mostly been putting us into space for the last few years, and just now private companies are taking over. The first I'd like to talk about is NASA. Everyone knows NASA. They put us on the moon, but they haven't been doing all that much for the past 10, even 20 years. The last space shuttle, the iconic space shuttle, was launched in 2010 October, and NASA almost hasn't put an astronaut into space since then. But they are planning on working on what's called the SLS, the Space Launch System, and they're planning a moon space station. Another government agency, it's not particularly one government, it's the European Space Agency. It's a collaborative effort between a bunch of different European nations. They've done very significant work with their Ariane series of rockets, and they put countless probes and exploration vehicles into space with their Ariane rockets. And so the last space agency I'm going to talk about is the Russian space agency, Roscosmos. Roscosmos is responsible for almost all astronauts and cosmonauts on the space station for the last 10 years. They've been constantly putting people up there with their Soyuz R7 rocket, and the R7 is actually the same rocket that put the first orbital satellite into orbit. So yeah, space agencies, or government space agencies, have been taking a back seat to corporate space agencies, and I think that by the time of 2025, we might have gone to the moon or gone to Mars with the BFR. Thank you.